or a prophet who speaks in the name of another God.
No, hang on. Did Muhammad speak in the name of Yahweh?
No. So
he's a false prophet. According to the Bible, he should have been put to death.
Can you read it again?
Why this hatred for Prophet Muhammad?
Are you listening to Hatun or not?
I don't listen to
Muhammad is not a prophet because he didn't know the name of Yahweh. This is according to Deuteronomy 18.
Who said Yahweh?
There is no Yahweh in your Bible. There is no Yahweh in your whole Bible.
He was not an Israelite, was he? He was an Arab.
Was Abraham Israelite?
And he didn't do any miracles. So according to those three criteria, he should have been put to death. According to the Bible, he should have been put to death.
Can you read it?
Why should anyone be forced to accept? Never kill them for it, though.
They kill him.
Never kill them. If somebody didn't accept Jesus, I'd never then go and slaughter them. I think it's okay to kill
Can I say
them.
something?
Brother,
Let me say one. Brother, let me say. Yeah. But he didn't.
Jesus himself never even.
No, you're right there. But he.
You said, how can I follow a man who said kill?
No, Jesus, in fact, Jesus said just the opposite. He says in Matthew 26, verse 52, he put away your sword, Peter, for he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. So it's very clear that Jesus over here does not use the sword. Sorry, Jesus over here.
Lizzie saying Prophet Muhammad cannot be a prophet because he was not Israelite. Abraham was not Israelite, but he was a prophet in Deuteronomy. Now let me speak. So I'm saying, why this hatred for Prophet Muhammad? You make up anything, even go against your Bible, just to reject the mighty Prophet Muhammad. That shows you the hypocrisy of these people.
But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name that I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, how may we know the word that the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken.
Is that the book should not have a failed prophecy. Deuteronomy 18:22 says that if a prophet speaks something and it doesn't happen, don't listen to him. In short, that is a false prophet. Now it turns out that there are passages in both the Old Testament and the New that predict something and then it doesn't happen. For example, Paul, writing in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17, speaks of Jesus coming back in Paul's own lifetime, so that he is included among the we who would be taken up into heaven when Jesus returns. And of course, this did not happen. It is a failed prophecy, and on this criterion, the Bible fails.
According to the Bible, he should have been put to death.
You know, how is Jesus going to return? Is he going to return? Yes, I believe Jesus said he's going to return. How is he going to return? I don't know. Or what I mean, you know, what's it going to look like? When's it going to be? I have no idea. If Jesus didn't know the day or hour, I'm certainly not going to know it. And the earliest Christians, including Paul, at least for a while with Paul, before writing 2 Corinthians, by the time you get to the mid-50s, it appeared that these earliest Christians believed that Jesus was coming back in their lifetime. And by the time you got to the mid-50s, Paul was seeming to come to the realization it was probably not going to be within their lifetimes. But there they were, the words of Jesus still echoing in the air at that point. The people who had actually heard him, most of them still alive. And the way they interpreted Jesus was that he was going to come back within their lifetime. It was that clear to them, and then they changed their minds on it. So if they were confused and they were that close. I just don't know that I'm going to be able to know that kind of stuff.
Where did the modern religious right come from using this kind of persecution language?
Wow. Well, I'm neither American nor a specialist in modern America, so I couldn't really say, but the rhetoric is sort of continuous. Part of it's actually in the New Testament. Jesus predicts that Christians will be persecuted. Right. And so Christians say, well, see, Jesus told us that we would be. What's interesting is that when you look at the specifics of those passages, a very different picture emerges. So in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me, defend me in courtrooms, and some of you who are standing here will be alive when I return.
Right.
Now, clearly,
after one generation, that starts to
that's not true. So why is it that we subscribe to the other part of this prophecy, that we're always persecuted? It's because we think that it's been proven throughout history, particularly in that early period. But Jesus' specific prophecies weren't terribly accurate. So he says that James and John, the sons of Zebedee, would be baptized with his baptism, which is sort of a euphemism for die. Mm-hmm. But John, the son of Zebedee, is the only one of the disciples not to have been martyred. That's not a great track record for prophesying martyrdom. Now, we can read this metaphorically. We don't have to read it as a prophecy about persecution. The reason that we do is because this persecution mentality is so useful when it comes to defending our turf and sort of making claims in sort of discussions about society.
We know that the doctrine of the Trinity took a couple of 100 years to develop. Christians got together in the Council of Nicaea in the year 325, and at that time they ruled that Jesus is very God of very God. And they said, we also believe in the Holy Spirit, but they did not say anything about the Holy Spirit being God or that the Holy Spirit should be worshipped. They had to come back in the Council of Constantinople in 381, and that is when they ruled that the Holy Spirit should also be worshipped along with God the Father and the Son. So that shows a development in the doctrine. If you go back even earlier to the Apostles' Creed, which is from the 2nd century, it doesn't even say the Son is to be worshipped. So now we have 3 creeds. The Apostles' Creed, 2nd century. Council of Nicaea, early 4th century. Council of Constantinople, late 4th century. So if you see the development, only one God here. Apostles' Creed, 2nd century. Only the Father is God. Second of these we have in the Council of Nicaea, early 4th century. Now the Son is also God. Now we have 2. Later in that century, Constantinople, now the Holy Spirit is also God. Now we have 3. So it goes from 1 to 2 to 3. It goes from Unitarian to Binitarian to Trinitarian. And still, I say Trinitarian with some qualification, because the idea that how these 3 can still be one, that this took more time to be worked out. That does not mean that some of the earlier church fathers did not have some inkling of this. Yes, there is development. I've shown that this development started even with the Gospel according to John, and even before the Gospel according to